Today we are going to see about Titanic is a 1997 American epic romance and disaster film directed, written, produced, and co-edited by James Cameron. Incorporating both historical and fictionalized aspects, it is based on accounts of the sinking of RMS Titanic in 1912. Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio star as members of different social classes who fall in love during the ship's maiden voyage. The film begins in 1996, where a treasure-hunting team, led by Brock Lovett, dives to the wreck of the Titanic aboard one of the submersibles of academic Mstislav Keldysh in their search for a necklace with a rare diamond, known as the Heart of the Ocean. They discover a safe and upon opening it, fail to find the diamond except a nude drawing of a woman wearing the said jewelry. The discovery gains the attention of an elderly pottery businesswoman named Rose Dawson Calvert and her granddaughter, Lizzie. After contacting the team and revealing her identity as the woman in the drawing, Rose and Lizzie are flown to the Keldysh where they meet the team and take up residence there. After the team exhibits the artifacts recovered from the wreck and gives forensic detail on the sinking, Rose reveals her story about her experiences on board the doomed luxury liner 84 years ago. The film flashes back to 1912, where a 17-year-old Rose, then known as Rose DeWitt Bukater, is returning to America on Titanic with her fiancé Caledon Nathan, Cal, Hockley and mother, Ruth DeWitt Bukater. Despite being from a very wealthy background, Rose finds herself trapped in this marriage so that Cal can have his trophy wife and Ruth can get the money from Cal's family to pay off the debts from her late husband. Not long into the journey after departing from Queenstown, Rose decides that suicide is the only way out. Jack Dawson is a traveler who never stays in one place for long. He finds himself in a bar at a poker game with two Swedish men who are about to board Titanic. One of the Swedish men bets their Titanic tickets and Jack wins the game, and thus the tickets, with a full house. So Jack and his Italian friend, Fabrizio de Rossi, take their winnings and board the Titanic. They befriend Irishman Thomas, Tommy, Ryan, and whilst hanging out on C deck, Jack catches the eye of a beautiful woman on A deck, and he's completely fixated on her. That night, Jack is relaxing on a bench with a cigarette when a woman, no less the same woman he saw during the day, runs past him. Jack investigates and sees that the woman about to commit suicide by jumping off the stern of the ship. Jack intervenes and convinces her to reconsider this idea, but as she climbs back over, Rose slips but is saved by Jack. Because she's hanging on one arm, she screams in panic, which draws the attention of some seamen. When they arrive and find Rose on her back and Jack besides her with his shoes off, Quartermaster George Rowe assumes that Jack raped the young woman and summons for the master-at-arms. Later, Cal and Spicer Lovejoy arrive at the scene. Caledon is angry and shakes Jack, asking him what he was thinking. Rose makes up a story about her attempting to see the propellers, to cover Jack and hide the fact that she was attempting to kill herself. Jack plays along, and with this revelation, Jack is invited to dine at first class as a reward. However, Cal's right-hand man Lovejoy was a smart detective once, and deducts that the story of him saving Rose is fishy based on Dawson's untied shoes. The next day, Jack and Rose take a stroll around the boat deck and they have a bit of an argument after Jack asks straightforward questions about her relationship with Caledon, which upsets Rose, who feels he's being rude. Rose discovers that Jack is a great drawer and Jack tells her the story behind the drawings he's kept in a bundle. After a brief encounter with Ruth, Jack prepares himself for dining in first class, with help from Margaret Molly Brown. The dinner goes well as the first-class passengers take a liking to Jack. Much later, the party breaks apart and the men retreat to the smoking room, of which Jack refuses the offer to join in on. Before leaving, Jack passes a note to Rose, requesting to meet him at the clock of the grand staircase. When doing so, Rose is invited to a real party in third class where there is Irish dancing. Jack, Rose, Fabrizio, and Tommy dance with many others to happy music. Jack and Rose at one point own the dance floor before the entire party begins a daisy chain. Unknown to anyone, Lovejoy is watching and reports Rose's actions to Cal. Rose returns to her stateroom for lunch with Cal, where he reveals his anger at what Rose did and instructs her to stay away from Jack. Soon after, Ruth reminds Rose why it is so important for the family that she marries Cal, telling her also that she is forbidden to see that boy again. The next day, Jack attempts to see Rose again during a church service but is led away by Lovejoy. He sneaks up to the boat deck by stealing a first-class passenger's hat and jacket. Rose and Cal at the time are being taken on a tour by Thomas Andrews, where it is revealed there are not enough lifeboats for everyone on board. During the tour, Rose is stolen away by Jack, who informs her that her family has got her trapped and that her soul is gonna die if she doesn't break free, and Rose reluctantly turns Jack down and instructs him to never approach her again, as she states she has already chosen Cal. After sitting at tea with some women, watching a little girl being corrected by her mother in the lounge, whilst her own mother humiliates Rose for choosing a lavender color for her bridesmaids' gowns, she changes her mind after she realizes that her heart truly belongs with Jack. As the sun sets, Jack, staring in the distance in sadness, and stands at the bow, thinking he has lost the woman he loved, but Rose appears behind him, revealing that she changed her mind. Without saying another word, he tells her to close her eyes and guides her up on the railings at the front. When she opens her eyes, Rose feels as if she is flying, and the two kiss for the first time. Back in 1996, old Rose reveals that this is the last time Titanic ever saw daylight. Jack and Rose return to Rose's stateroom, where Rose requests that Jack draw her wearing the heart of the ocean and nothing else. Jack remains a professional and carries out the duties requested by him from a paying customer. But as they admire his work, Jack and Rose are forced to make their escape from the stateroom as Lovejoy returns because Caledon was getting anxious that she still was not around. The duo run away and hurry down the ship as Lovejoy gives chase after Jack and Rose. The duo manages to evade the bodyguard when they escape into the belly of the ship and enter a decompressing chamber to slide down a ladder to the boiler rooms. Jack and Rose reach the cargo hold at the front of the ship and make love in the back seat of a car. Afterward, the lovers make their way up to sea deck, where Rose reveals that when the ship docks in New York, she wants to leave with Jack. Their love is true and they are together. Above them in the crow's nest, Frederick Fleet watches the lovebirds, but as he returns to looking ahead with Reginald Lee, an iceberg at that moment appears out of the darkness, directly in the path of Titanic. Fleet sounds the bell and phones the bridge. James Paul Moody responds and is informed by Fleet that there is an iceberg right ahead. Moody informs William Murdoch, who orders Robert Hickens to turn the ship hard to starboard, and the Titanic begins to evade the oncoming iceberg. Murdoch also switches the engine telegraph to full astern to slow down the ship. In the engine room and boiler rooms, the engine to the center propeller is stopped, and the port and starboard propellers reverse directions at full speed, slowing down the ship. The crew manages to avoid a head-on, but it is not enough, and Titanic collides with the iceberg on the starboard side, punching holes into the hull through 5 watertight compartments, allowing thousands of gallons of seawater to surge into the ship. Jack and Rose to watch as the iceberg grazes alongside the ship, sending small chunks of ice falling onto the decks. Murdoch closes the watertight doors as the ship clears the iceberg, though the catastrophe has just begun. After the iceberg collision, aware of the collision, Jack and Rose return to the latter's stateroom to inform Cal and Ruth. In the corridor, they meet up with Lovejoy and they arrive to find the Master of Arms there, as well. Security officers search Jack and find the missing heart of the ocean in his coat. A confused Rose watches as Jack is taken away by security as she is led up to the boat deck with Cal and Ruth. Meanwhile, in the crew quarters, important figures gather, including Captain Edward John Smith, Joseph Bruce Ismay, and Thomas Andrews. The crew had inspected the damage and Andrews had a final verdict. Here, Andrews reveals that Titanic has taken too much water and that within an hour, 2 at most, she will sink. Crew members begin to gather passengers to be put into lifeboats. The atmosphere on the ship is calm as many passengers are unaware of the danger that they are in. As women and children are to take the lifeboats above men, Ruth and Molly board one and Rose is invited too, but her heart still remains with Jack and flees. Ruth's lifeboat is then lowered into the water despite her protest. Rose climbs down the decks and runs into Thomas Andrews, who reveals the location of Jack. Rose rides the elevator down to E deck and makes her way to the room where Jack is handcuffed to a thick white pipe. After a lover's reunion, Rose goes off to find help to free Jack.